Yes. So that brings us to the next one of the global events that have been happening. Which has been focused a lot, which is the World Cup football. And I'm a big fan of people who know me know that I'm a big fan of football, and I play and I try to follow as much as possible. And World Cup is obviously very close to me for many reasons. One, it's something that has a lot of fan flowing in Kerala and in other states like Bengal, Goa, in India. So this is something a lot of and globally, of course, it's the biggest event. Maybe after at par with Olympics or maybe just after Olympics, it's perhaps the biggest event that gets maximum attention in the news media and often. Uh, People and the places that the World Cup hosts becomes also center point of discussion. And in this year, particularly, there has been a lot of debate around the country that hosted it, which is Qatar. And the major issue has been, what I understand, has been around whether a nation that is not foundationally based on the Western liberal values have the right to host a global event. That has been the core focus area of the discussion, where a set of people have been arguing that because Qatar has not been so vigilant about protecting the human rights of immigrants, not so protect, as in their constitutional and their administration itself makes it clear that they are not favorable of having people exercising free speech, right to dress in the way they want, right to choose the partner they wish to have, reference to homosexuality and LGBT community. So there has been that controversy that's been happening on the one side, and the other side, there has been an argument around whether the people who are accusing Qatar of violating rights, whether they can take the moral high ground, because at some point the Western countries have been the exploiters. They've been exploiting people, and so it's a question of whether somebody can take the moral ground, whether somebody can be blamed for this, whether something like this, like a country like Qatar has whether they are within their rights to host a global event. I just like to know your views on this. RD, you want to come in here? What is your take, if you've been following this news on this?
Um, right. I think, I mean, this is part of a larger conversation. Um, but I'll just like from my side, I've actually never been able to look at football more than like from a political or a different lens. Because I've always sort of looked at it as to like, I mean, this is going to sound funny again, but I've always looked at it from like very linear lens. That okay,
Hmm.
these are the teams that are playing,
Hmm.
and if a particular team wins, then the amount of like joy that the fan of that team get is something I really like vibe with for the large part. I know this is a little bit on a tangent, but it reminds me of this recent match that happened, I think, between Germany and Japan, which
Yes. Yeah.
is something which I think in the last World Cup, if I'm not wrong, the finalists were Germany and France, no? Was it?
France and Germany. I can't recall, man. Sorry, my memory is poor. But yeah,
Yeah.
France was
So
certainly fine because he eventually won it.
yeah.
But
So Germany was also like one of the favorites of like
correct.
it has been a very good team. To
Yeah.
say that Germany loses at least like an initial opening match like that, and also with Japan, they have a lot of like the countries themselves have so many relations between each other because of the whole the World War Two aspect of it.
Yeah.
But so that's something which I felt a lot during this match. So have you
Yeah.
guys followed this particular match? I think the score was the 2-1 where Germany lost by one goal.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
yeah. So
Yeah.
uh, that was quite because I was a kind of a fan of Japan after how they kind of went about in the last World Cup as well. Um, so they kind of, I feel they had like a pocket of surprises every time they are on the field. Although they're quite short to the larger European counterparts. But they have like a good set of players who can really people off guard and create matches like these. But also another upsetting, or not upsetting, but upset match was the Saudi and Argentina kind
Yeah.
of match, which was crazy.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. So before going to that, I just had one more point on this Japan and Germany match. I also feel like the cultural personas that are usually like propagated for the countries, it's also very interesting to see from that lens because I remember that I think largely in this match uh, mostly the dominating team was Germany in the sense that it had more
Right.
possession,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
But the way Japan played the game at the end with those two goals was something that sort of really made that difference. So always like in my head, I've understood Germany to be sort of bit more like at least the personas that are propagated, which I know are not true, is some a country which is very strict in general about certain aspects, and whereas Japan comes to me as very humble. So
Right.
just to see that, I was very excited. But yeah, the second upset or that match with Saudi Arabia and Argentina
Yeah.
was also pretty interesting because it's also like Argentina and Portugal are two teams where I've seen that these teams are largely led by these two superstars
Superstars. Yeah.
players, right?
Mm.
Messi and Ronaldo. It's always in the conversation.
Mm.
So I mean, it's interesting that how they lost that match. But what are your thoughts? So you were sharing, yeah.
No, I just want when you moved from Japan, I also wanted to kind of bring in their, when you said your humble qualities, but they were also there were news articles where one post on LinkedIn where the fans of uh, Japan actually cleaned up the stadium after people left,
Oh wow.
which was
Right. Correct.
quite
Yeah. Saw that.
shocking.
Mm.
Yeah, quite shocking. And like, even if it wasn't their team which was playing, at the end of the day, they cleaned up the entire stadium, and that was the culture that they, and the values and the principles that they come in with. That's
Mm.
something to this World Cup.
Yeah. So just my thoughts around that Argentina Saudi match. In many ways, it just to take a step back, before discussing that, just to take a step back and just observing the matches that have happened so far, there is a larger trend that is emerging, which is that the smaller teams, the so-called smaller teams from Africa and Asia, which historically has not been the top performers in World Cups because obviously they can't compete with European teams which have better infrastructure, better lineage, better history of playing good football. So this World Cup has been an aberration in that there have been a lot of upsets, right? One is obviously Saudi Arabia and Argentina. Then you had Japan, Germany upset. Then you had Iran upsetting Wales, right? As
Yeah.
yesterday, as recently as yesterday. So there is a larger trend emerging that smaller, less historically, weaker countries, weaker football teams have been showing their might in this World Cup. And I think one reason could be is how the footballing skill sets across nations have been sort of evening out because obviously the technology is helping and the infrastructure is helping. There is lot more money being spent on developing football as a sport. There is a lot more exposure now because of all the technology or the tactics and the play and all those things. And there is a greater awareness about fitness also. There is greater control and customization around fitness. What is the best suited fitness and in terms of the food, diet, and exercise and everything, right, that includes fitness. There's a lot of focus on that. So there is evening out, sort of democratization of how football is played when it
Yeah.
comes to skill sets, and also there is a lot more fluidity in talent moving around. So earlier, a player from Japan would spend most of his times playing in Japan itself. He would not get the opportunity. He would not get discovered. And then he would, even if he's a talented player who's suitable for any other, much better leagues, he would not get discovered. But now that because the technology is facilitated, now the player from Japan or an Iran or an Ecuador can easily be playing for the top teams in the world, right? So discoverability has become a great point, and that has evened out the competition. Is good for the sport because better competition and so on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. Those those are the two areas which are definitely sort of contributing to this factor. Another
Hmm.
corollary to the first point that you said, I feel, is also the fact that it's globalization or what it is. I can't pinpoint, but there are more regular matches that are happening in even at like what do you say, at local stage. Like
Correct.
let's
Yeah.
take for example India. India has its own football league.
Yeah.
Um, Not every country is like India has its own football league, but they're more, at every stage those matches that are happening are being captured. And as you said, technology has certain role to play in this so that people can compare the performance across. But
Yeah.
that is also leading to the whole factor that you're playing more frequently, you're able to be in the best form, and so that's how the talent is also appearing more.
Right, right. And one thing I noticed during the Argentina Saudi match, one tactical genius that I saw from Saudi team is that Argentina, they played a very, we call in football terms, called a high line, which means the entire team was playing far ahead in terms of their positioning. So their last defender would be somewhere in the middle of their half, which is very unusual because, so if you're playing a stronger team, your general tendency, your intuitive nature is to be defending because they have stronger strikers, world class players like Messi, Di Maria, and so on. So obviously they want to hold back and then defend their fort, not to concede too many goals. That's instinctive nature for any team. Somebody like an Saudi Arabia, that's intuitively what they do. But here, what they've done is they played a very high game, a high level game, because what they've done is they pushed their team so forward. They did something called an offside trap. So an offside rule is structured in a way that if your player is receiving a pass from another player from the same team, and you are ahead of the last defender in the from the other team, right? Then you can be called as an offside because you're essentially receiving the ball with nobody in front except for goalie, nobody with you except for goalie. So that in a way is kind of seen as an unfair play. So here what they've done is because the team is playing so upfront, the defenders are so playing almost on the half line. The every time Argentina receives a ball from one of their midfielders, Argentine strikers, they are called offside. And this happened like three times in the match. Three times they scored the goal, all of them call offside. So it kind of disrupted their play. And then what happened was, the moment Saudi scored the second goal, they were already down and out because they tried so much they couldn't get the ball through. They were used to playing that kind of a football. They did not have an alternative strategy. So I think the tactical genius of the Saudi coach and the Saudi think tank has to be appreciated here. That's something that I really liked while watching the match. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So also one correction from my side. Germany was the defending champion in 2018 World Cup, but they were eliminated from the group stage itself um,
Yes.
at that time. And the last World Cup, it was Croatia versus France, and then France won.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Correct. Yeah.